Hey everyone, and welcome to the Lessons of the Wild podcast, the Beginner's Guide to Hunting, episode number 2. Thank you for listening. This episode, I think, is a pretty solid episode. I'm just going to go over some stuff that I think you should know before you go out buying stuff to get going hunting or even sit in the woods. So I think it's pretty valuable. I think it's something everyone should know beforehand. Alright, with that being said, I hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 2. Thank you for being here. Just want to start off by saying Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Thanksgiving. It's a late one, I know. I'm sorry for not putting out new content in a while, and sorry for the last upload. If you listened to it and got a tongue full of my throat, I'm so sorry. It was so gross. I listened back to it after I uploaded it, and that was a mistake. So this is my kind of redo of that episode. If you didn't listen to it, you're lucky because you could hear every bodily noise that I make because I got a new microphone and did not understand the power of good audio. So I apologize. I'm just sitting here this morning. It's like 4 in the morning. Oh, 5 in the morning, not 4 in the morning. Can't read. Just sipping on some coffee, hanging out with my dog Lily. If you hear some jingles, that's her. She'll be probably a recurring guest on this podcast. If I keep doing this, waking up with dreams of, being a good podcaster for a living. Today it's going to be a pretty chill episode. Might take about an hour or so. Try to go through it as smoothly as possible, but I'm human. We'll see how it goes. I really just want to kind of cover a bunch of stuff that I think every beginner hunter should know before they go out spending a bunch of money on a bunch of equipment and before they go out in the woods and break a rule, get themselves in trouble when they just didn't know due to ignorance. So, sorry about that. That's my normal alarm to get up, which I usually ignore and go back to sleep for another hour and a half. But that's my 5 a.m. alarm. My wife hates it. So, that being said, let's get going on it, alright? First thing I want to talk about is kind of a big one. It's just rules and regulations. Hunting, I don't know if you guys know this as beginner hunters, or if you're just a veteran hunter and listening for fun, you definitely know. There are a bunch of regulations as far as hunting goes. The government is pretty strict on this resource that we're utilizing. So, let's talk about it. Every state has their own laws, period. Every state manages their wildlife within that state, and it is the public property of the people, the wildlife that is, of that state, and it's their responsibility to manage it. So biologists and state biologists usually come up with plans, and it usually gets beaten up and bruised through legislation, and things kind of change. But for the most part, it is handled pretty well. I mean, as far as government goes, it's the best form of regulation and well managed I've ever seen in government, but that's a different podcast. And every state is different with their laws. So, what does that mean for the beginner hunter? That means if you're hunting in the state you live, you're a resident of that state, you have laws that pertain to you. If you go to a different state and are non-resident, you have different laws that do, like, your state laws do not carry over. It's the laws of that state you must follow. It's pretty straightforward. But within that, there is a bunch of stipulations. Every state has a resident, non-resident clause for the most part, and that involves usually just a money difference. If you're a resident paying taxes there, you're not going to pay as much for a license or a tag. And you might need one, you might need both, depending on the state. It's all kind of up in the air. Where can you find this, information? Because it is readily available to you as the consumer. Usually a website. If I'm going to hunt a different state, I tend to hunt like Indiana, Missouri. I Google just whatever state, fish and wildlife, fish and game, and it's usually a .gov, website. And there's a hunting regulations book, that usually comes, and they can either break it down by species, they can break it down by hunting and trapping, they can, fishing too. There's usually laws. If you've ever been fishing, you should know that there's a license, and some people don't like that. But just know that every license, all the money goes back into conservation and making the resource we're utilizing stronger versus going to some bridge, maybe a bridge, I don't know, but like some random political bullshit. All right, this is really good hunting funds about 85% of conservation through the Dingle Johnson, and I'm blanking because it's early in the morning. Oh my gosh. Robinson something. I'm sorry, I'll think of it later, but I'm having a real early morning. It's messing me up. But between these two acts, the state is getting a lot of money to manage these resources. So whatever you buy, it's not a waste of money. And if you don't tag out, you've basically made a donation to conservation, which is huge. What do I mean by tag out? I mean by reach your limit on an animal, which we'll talk about some more. So every state has different requirements. Some states even have further requirements or laws regulating where you can hunt, when you can hunt. I mean, every state has time-wise, but like, let's say for Kentucky, for example, there's public land, but rifle season, you're only allowed to hunt a quota hunt and must have a special tag to have a quota hunt on certain pieces of land. And it's just a matter of you being aware of what's going on, probably making some phone calls because it's not always clear to your fish and game, like a game warden, which is like an officer of the law, or someone who just knows and is a reliable resource. I wouldn't rely on your buddy because it's real easy to make a mistake, and mistakes, game wardens are pretty forgiving, but if you're knowingly breaking the law, you're not going to be okay. So just, be ready, be read up, go to that website, learn everything. Every species is different. Every species has limits on what you can take, what you can keep in your freezer. As far as, you might have a daily bag limit, which is, let's say, for dove, I have a daily bag limit of like 15 here in Kentucky. And then I don't know what the freezer limit is because I never reach it, shocker, because I'm terrible at shooting dove. But, there's everything. For deer in Kentucky, I can take four deer, 1 buck, 3 antlerless, and if I want to buy additional bonus tags, I can do that. I don't need to do that. 1 deer usually suffices for me, maybe 2, might be much, but I'm eating a lot more wild game lately, so I'm going to try to get out there more and convince my wife to get a deep freezer. See if that happens. But that's important to know, that different licensure requirements as well. Some states you need to have a license. Some states you need to have just a deer tag or a tag. Some states you need both. Some states you need a small game license, and then you can get your big game license. It all depends, and it is all related to getting a certain species. So look it up, figure it out, because it's important, and it's not a waste of money or time because you're really doing a good thing. Another thing I want to talk about, most states require some form of hunter's education and proof of that, and it's something you should carry on you at all times. Luckily, there are a lot of states that use this online resource. I don't have the exact website on me. I should have probably looked it up beforehand. Sorry. But you just type in hunter's education. It's usually one of the first things that pop up on the Google. I took mine online. I actually did both just to kind of experience both when I was, just starting out because I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to absorb as much as I could. But I found that the online resource was much more, educational. The in-person one turned out to be more like a lot of father-sons who is very cultural, very niche, I don't know if that's a word to use, but like, I don't know. There was a lot of assumptions made of the person learning to hunt, like they've been engulfed in it their whole life, and it was very like assumed, which it's mostly gun safety for the most part in person. At least it was for me. I don't know how it is. It depends on the guy teaching it, but it just, I mean, I met a bunch of cool people, so I thought it was really cool. But in retrospect, I didn't need to take it. I already had my hunter's ed, but I took it with my little brothers and my stepdad. It was fun. I met some guys in Indiana who, because I'm from Indiana originally, who brew beer. Three Floyd's beer, actually. If you ever drink that, it's really good beer. So yeah, if it were me, I would just do the online course. You get a really nice like license, hype up, in the mail, and it's not just like a laminated piece of paper, which makes it much more, safe in your wallet because you need to have proof of hunter's education at all times. Now, some states do a thing where you can be like a mentee hunter, and for like your first year, if you just want to try it out, see if you like it. Which if you do it, I'm almost positive you'll fall in love with it as much as I have. So it's a dangerous course. You want to lose a bunch of money and time, but have a great time doing it. Hunting's for you. But they have a license you can get if you're with a hunter who's already educated, has their card. You could do like your first year, just like a trial run. You could buy these licenses and just have like you pay like $15 extra in Kentucky at least, and you can hunt with, but you have to be with someone, and it's a really good way to get new hunters out there, and I think it's very valuable, especially if you're an adult onset hunter like me. There's a lot of emotion involved and a lot of fear. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good way to invest. But it's very important that you do hunter's ed first, okay? But well, not really. You don't need to do it first if you have these mentee things, but it's important you have it if you're going to continue because, you need it. One, two, it's valuable. It's very valuable, and it goes over a lot of safety stuff that you just don't think of as a beginner hunter, especially if you haven't been around firearms your whole life like I have, or sharp things that can kill you. So something to think about, something to do that you got to do. Some states don't accept this online course, so make sure your state you're going to hunt in does. And if you have to take it in person, you have to take it in person. Some states require that you do it in person. I think out west you might have to for like Montana. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. So I already kind of touched on how some states have different requirements for different spots in the state to hunt. Really, you alright, dog? Just kind of going crazy. So like out west, I know there's a lot of unit hunts, and they draw tags based on the unit you're trying to hunt. Some are over the counter, which a unit's like a set acreage in the state that has public land that you can hunt, and that in itself has its own requirements as far as firearm restriction, animal, you could take population stuff they worry about. So make sure if you plan on hunting out there or have a state, well, always scout. That's important. Always kind of find out where you want to be, way before season starts, because you don't want to be trotting around while people are hunting like a dope and, hurt someone else's hunt. That's kind of a no-no. So cultural thing that you should know. And make sure you're out there in the woods, kind of seeing where things are, understand, how animals are behaving, or learn how animals are behaving. And I'm going to kind of go over some resources here at the end where you can learn some of these things, so you're not going out there blind. So just be prepared and understand where you want to be before you're out buying stuff, because you could be like, hey, this is an over-the-counter hunt, but it's incredibly difficult. Like, you're out there, you don't see any sign. Like, there's a reason it's an over-the-counter hunt. Or you can put in for a lottery and, potentially have more success. So, what are lotteries? Lotteries are kind of just like a normal thing. You put in for a tag, like you drop your name in a hat, essentially, for like $10, depending on the state. In Kentucky, elk is a $10 put-in fee for cow or bull. And then sometime during the year they draw names, and if your name gets drawn, then you pay the full price. So be prepared for that. You're not just paying $10. I know Elk in Kentucky is like $500, so it's a huge investment. That's huge for me right now. I hope one day it's not, but that's insane. And when you draw a tag, you have the potential to not be successful. So that's something you really need to think about and balance with your family life, because this sport is unfortunately incredibly expensive. And I'm going to try to mitigate that because I have spent way too much money in my life on this already, and I'm not even that far into my career. So luckily I have a lot of family that helped me out, gifts and stuff, but be prepared for that. And I am definitely of the mindset of buy once, cry once as far as equipment goes. We'll get into that, but it's an investment. You don't need it to start, but once you get going. Okay, so lotteries, and then your name's drawn, and then you can hunt if you get drawn. If you don't get drawn, some states have you build a point system where you get more names in the hat next time you apply. Some states don't. That's kind of a hot topic in some places. I don't know. I've never done it. I get it. But I think you should have more of a chance. But I also think it kind of limits the new hunter. So I don't know. Has its advantages, has its disadvantages. Raises money regardless for conservation, so you can't really be mad at it. I already kind of touched about public land, private land. Some states have different laws for hunting private land and public land. Some states have requirements for both that are the same. Where does public land? It's not your park. You can't go to your park and kill something. There are national forests you can hunt. Make sure you're allowed to hunt if you're going public where you want to hunt. And if it's not listed in your book, a phone call doesn't hurt. An email doesn't hurt. Be prepared. Do it way ahead of time so you can hunt there and scout there and do whatever. But you don't want to be in a neighborhood where you can't hunt, or a park that's real close to neighborhood, kill a deer, and then scar a little Jimmy for life. Even though I think it's a valuable thing to scar him with, it's not kosher. So make sure you figure it out before you go out there. Private land, you can hunt private land, period. That doesn't mean in subdivisions. That means acreage, for the most part, unincorporated areas. So think about that. Figure out where you're hunting. I hunt mostly private land, not because I don't want to hunt public land, but because I just haven't had a good opportunity, and I'm nervous. I'm really nervous about it. This next season, I'm gonna really make my goal to hunt public land and try to get a critter off there. I do some public land like squirrel hunts and stuff, but the big game is what I'm really worried about. There's a lot of equipment involved here for whitetail that just sit, and that's kind of the culture of hunting here, and ambush hunting is kind of the way you go about whitetail in the Midwest. But that's an expensive venture, and leaving stuff out there in public land is not something I like to think about because a lot of stuff gets stolen. So that's another thing to think about if you're going to hunt public land and have to leave stuff out there. Be prepared for things to potentially be stolen, or prevent that from happening with insane locks, because people are assholes. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say it, but people suck a lot. There's a lot of good people, and there's a lot of good in the world, but people suck still. Okay, so seasons. Every species has a season that you can take it. Some seasons are longer for certain species. Like squirrel is probably the longest season. It's I don't know, August to probably June. Don't quote me on that. But for Kentucky, it's super long. It's like 8 months. And they're game animals. Some animals don't even have a season listed because they're not considered game animals. If you want to hunt them, make a phone call, make an email, see what you're allowed to do. If you want to trap, there's laws for that too. So if that's something you're interested in, it's very difficult. I've never done it. Want to start doing it, but it's tough. But you're allowed to do X, Y, Z in certain seasons. That's trapping, that's hunting with a bow, that's hunting with a rifle, that's hunting with a crossbow, that's hunting with a muzzle loader, that's hunting with a atlatl. I don't know. If you want to get weird, want to get freaky on this hunting thing, and there's pros and cons. Bow hunting usually goes much longer because it is much more difficult. Rifle hunting is usually a week or two for whitetail at least. I don't know about elk and stuff, but you know, it's easier to take an animal. Not saying it's easy because none of it's easy, but it is less difficult to shoot something with a rifle than a bow. And there's debate, like a bow you have a higher risk of injuring an animal. Rifle, it's kind of, if you hit it in the right spot, it's done because of the energy. But I like to do both. I don't discriminate. If I can get food on my table, I'm doing it. So I don't like crossbow. Not because I don't like crossbows, it's because I don't have one. And I don't really, if I can bow hunt, I'm going to bow hunt. I'd rather, but that's just me. I don't judge anyone. If you want to take an animal with a crossbow, do it. If you're listening to this and you're handicapped, you have different laws too. I want you to understand that you have you have every right to be hunting, and Fish and Game is great about allowing you to do that any means possible. So if you're a disabled hunter and you need help, have questions, just call a game warden, call Fish and Game. They will answer all your questions. Hunting from a vehicle is usually not a thing for normal hunters, but I know disabled hunters are allowed to from an ATV, from whatever you got to do. And it's great. It's absolutely great. And I'm sure there's groups out there that hunt. If you are handicapped and you want to hunt with me, you give me a call. I would love to figure this out for you. And if you want to go in Kentucky, we'll do something. Or I'm moving to Missouri in May. So, Missouri, let's do it. If you want to be that, shoot me a direct message. Instagram, email, in the description below. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Make a good video or something out of it. Get to know you. I like new friends. So, and if you're a hunter, you're my friend. So, let's do that. Okay, that's kind of all for state laws. So there are federal laws. A lot of migratory animals fall under federal law. I don't know about caribou, because I've never hunted caribou or have the opportunity to hunt caribou up in Alaska. But I know the migratory birds like goose, duck, dove, any other waterfowl species I'm not thinking of, they all fall under federal regulations. So what does that mean? That means the federal government has set a big base of rules, and every state further limits those rules, so you need to know both. And a federal duck stamp is required to hunt these on your license, as well as your HIP survey number. And that is just a quick survey that really helps, gives the government a lot of information as far as who's taking what, animal-wise, and how the species are handling it, and, etc. So just make sure you're following those rules. The HIP survey, every time I've hunted migratory birds, like I hunt dove mostly, I've never been waterfowling, but every time I've dove hunted, a game warden has been there and checked that I had my HIP survey. You don't need a duck stamp for dove, but you need a HIP survey. So just make sure you know your rules, and the state will usually post stuff, and if you don't know, ask questions. That's all you gotta do. It takes 10 minutes to make a phone call, like, hey, I'm new to this, I have a question, XYZ, and anyone will be happy to help you there. They're always pleasant. I've never had a bad experience with Fish and Game. I'm sure some people have, but they're usually really down-to-earth, humble people that are just there to help you because they love it as much as we do. Okay, cool stuff. Equipment. Let's talk equipment. First thing you need to know is you do not need everything in the world, excuse me, to get started. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to go on your first hunt. Now, you probably are going to end up spending thousands of dollars afterwards when you fall in love with it, just because, you get bit by the bug and you want all the cool shit. I get it, because I'm that guy. I like equipment. I'm a gear dork, but, my wife hates it. I like it. I'm going to go over some, necessities that I think you should have, regardless, for hunting and whatever. If you just like being outdoors, I think a lot of these are good to have. First and foremost, good pair of boots. Oh my gosh, I can't stress this enough. A good pair of boots, worn in, not just brand spanking new, and you're going to go hike 10 miles in. You need a good, worn in pair of boots. It depends on the season you're going to hunt. I use hiking boots for warm weather. My good hiking boots I've taken to Alaska, Peru, all these places I've been and trekked a lot of miles on it. They're so comfortable. I'm so familiar with them, and it's so nice. I don't get any blisters, but they're warm weather. Unfortunately, I do not have a good pair of insulated boots, which you definitely need, especially if your season falls in really cold time. Up north, man, whitetail hunting, you're just sitting in the stand, your feet are on metal, and it just saps heat from you, and it hurts so bad. um, it's rough. So that's on my Christmas list. I don't think I'll get it. The boots I want are sold out. So um, those definitely needs. Figure out what boot you need. There's a lot of good resources out there if you don't know. I know I like Loas are my hiking boots that I use, and they're just straight up hiking boots, brown leather. They look nice. They're good for whatever, and they're comfy, great hiking boots. Not super high on the ankle, but if you're going to be doing like mountain hiking or backcountry, if you're going up some tough terrain, you need to know the right boot for you. So that's something to do some research on. If you have any questions, shoot me a message. I'm always here for you guys. Okay, warm clothes. That's important. Wool. Wool. Get wool. Cotton kills, period. Alright? If you get cotton wet, it does not keep you warm. Wool, if it gets wet, it keeps you warm. It's way it insulates. That is so important because if you're out in the cold and something happens and you get wet or sweat, hypothermia will kill you. So it's super, super important. And it's way more comfortable to be warm than cold. Okay? Good pairs of wool socks. One, if you're going to be wearing wool socks, do not layer socks and make your boots super tight. You need blood flow to your foot. So wear just a pair of good wool socks. Keep your boots loose, not too tight, not too loose, but enough where you can wiggle your toes and move your feet within the boot. Blood flow keeps you warmer than layers on your feet. However, good base layers in wool and good wool or fleece or whatever you need to keep warm above that, but 100% need to have wool base layers. It is a game changer. But you don't need to make a huge investment in hunting clothes. You don't need to go to Cabela's, Bass Pro, wherever you're going to go, Sportsman's Warehouse, and spend $1,000 on a freaking jacket. You don't need to. I want to because I like Sitka right now and I'm a dork, but you don't. You know how many animals have been taken in blue jeans and a flannel? Like, so many creatures, man. You look at pictures of Fred Bear, who, is the father of compound bow hunting and bow hunting in the U.S. Not the founder, obviously, but, the modern day bow hunting. He's huge. He's in freaking blue jeans and a flannel, in a weird hat. I forget the name of those hats, but the ones that go over your ears. Not a beanie. The other one, it's like the Russian hat, I think of. So you don't need fancy stuff. There are some color things you should know before you go out hunting turkey, and stuff. Like, don't wear red, white, and blue. It's a bad idea. Get shot that way. Oh, man. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Sorry, distracted by my own notes. Dark colors. Browns. Again, blue jeans and flannel. Made things happen. Depending on your style hunt, just talk to people. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. If you want to call Fish and Game, they literally will handle anything. They're great people, and they want to see more hunters out there because it helps fund the things they love. So, or you can ask me. I legitimately have hunted in blue jeans and a flannel before and had an 8-point whitetail buck come up to my tree stand. So I don't think it makes a difference. When you're up in a tree stand, it might make a difference. On the ground, or it could just have been a stupid animal. Who knows? But if you want to go out there and experience something, just wear browns. Lots of browns, some green, maybe. If you want to get some face paint and get it all tactical, do what you got to do. But you don't need to drop a bunch of money for your first year of hunting. Just get out there, enjoy it, enjoy the outdoors. It's fun. You don't need to make a huge investment, and it's way easier to convince a spouse that way. But you can do this. Hunter Orange. Now, I think I touched on this a little bit, but A lot of state laws require you to have blaze orange, which is just that bright, stereotypical orange color that hunters wear. And there is state requirements for that on public land, private land. Certain kind of hunts, you need to have this color on to keep you safe, and that's what it's all about. Is that color doesn't occur in nature, so no one's going to shoot you if you are wearing that. Hopefully, people are dumb, and I don't want to say dumb because accidents happen, but you get all excited and your eyes play tricks on you, especially in that early hours in the morning and right before night. You think you see something, and bam, hunting's exciting, and emotions go crazy, and that's what happens. So wear your hunter orange, figure out what your hunter orange requirements are, and be safe. Safety is number one. Okay, let's talk boomsticks. As far as guns go, rifle, I think you can take care of anything with a 30 caliber. Now, moose and elk, you might be pushing it with a 308, but great rounds, 30-06, 300 Win Mag. I have a 308. I like my 308. I'm going to do some research on some, rounds to hunt bigger game, but my 308 is a great gun, man. I got it for a steal too, so I'm not complaining. You don't need a big scope, especially if you're a new hunter. It'll keep you from taking shots you don't want to be taking. You can use iron sights. That's fine. If you need to buy a scope, Simmons, cheap rifle scope, great scope. Just the crosshairs, nothing fancy. I have a Vortex now because my rifle came with it, but I started off with a Simmons. I still have it. It's still on the first gun, my shotgun, because in Indiana you're only allowed to use a slug gun, where you were. Now you can use rifle, but it's a great scope. You don't need to spend a crap load of money on, a scope or a rifle for that matter. Now, that being said, I am a firm believer in buy once, cry once. Getting what you want now, so you don't have to pay twice for something that you want. But my first deer has been taken with a Marlin 33. It's my father-in-law's. If you can borrow a weapon, borrow a weapon. It's the way to do it. Save money any way you can, because this is expensive. And I think a 30 caliber rifle is capable of taking most big game that you want to take. Hogs, deer, elk. I think elk is pretty solid with a 308, but we'll see. I don't actually know. Look it up. Ask someone. Ask your fishing game more than your neighbor. And then I think you just have a shotgun. A 12-gauge shotgun will take care of any small game or flying creatures. I have a Remington 870. It's a cheap shotgun. It's a pump action, which makes hunting, waterfowl a little more different, or flying things, but it's a great gun. And you can drop $1,200 on a Benelli or whatever you want to do, but my Remington 870 is going to be around forever. It's simple mechanism, works great every time. Had one problem with it, and that was just because I hadn't cleaned it in a long time, and then I cleaned it and it's fine. So I think you could just use a rifle and a shotgun, and you can take 90% of the critters you want to hunt with easily and humanely. Shotgun's good for squirrel, rabbit, pheasant, dove, duck, goose, rifle, big game, four-legged creatures, If you want to hunt bow, be aware that traditional bow hunting, like a longbow bow, is much harder, much harder, and takes a very skilled hunter, so it might not be what you want to use to get into bow hunting. A compound bow is great. Again, you don't need to spend a bunch of money on a compound bow, but there are a lot of things you need to know before buying a compound bow. A bunch of stuff. Don't be going out there and buying a used one on eBay that you don't know anything about, which I have done, and I'm currently using that bow I got off of eBay, but it was a risk, and it could have been bad if I didn't buy a certain quality of bow that I knew was high quality, a Hoyt or a Matthews or PSE or whatever. You can go to your local archery shop, which can be hit or miss, so you just that's kind of hard. archery is hard because there's a lot of people out there who claim they know what they're talking about and don't know what they're talking about. I'll talk about a solid resource that I've used, who you can trust 110%. But bows are something you need to take much more time thinking about buying. Rifles, kind of the same thing, but there's a lot of good rifles out there, and a lot of it's pretty hard to mess up a rifle nowadays. They do it pretty well. Same with the shotgun. There's some bad brands out there, but that's easy thing you can YouTube and figure out. I like Remington for a cheap, or Mossberg shotgun. Rifle, Savage. Remington, they've been having trouble in the recent years. I don't know if that's getting fixed, so maybe be cautious. I said Savage. Henry rifle if you want a lever action. Marlin lever, great guns, But bow-wise, compound bows, there's a lot to it. So be buyer beware. Be prepared. Nock On Archery is the resource, that I follow religiously, because bow stuff is expensive real fast. And this guy, John Dudley, he was a former professional archer for the U.S. Olympic team. He is the man, and he's a phenomenal coach, and he puts all this content online for the same reasons that I just said of you can't trust anything anymore. With his resource out there, people are getting a lot better because he's such a good and knowledgeable archer. So follow his stuff on YouTube, listen to his podcast, Nock On Podcast, NOCKON, if you want to learn bow hunting and just archery in general, make you better equipped. I think rifle and shotgun are the first thing you should do to start, because it's a lot harder to mess up a shot. I mean, definitely can, and I have, don't get me wrong, with a rifle and wounded creatures, but that animal didn't move afterwards where I hit it, and I was able to get up there and take care of things. On that note, let's kind of move on to some expectations. That was a little dark, I'm sorry, but that's something you need to expect as a hunter. You're going to have to take something's life, and it is nothing you should not take seriously. You shouldn't try to be masculine about it. You shouldn't try to be macho. It is a task, and it is difficult, and there is such a mix of emotions when it comes down to it. It's almost regret, but it's not regret. I don't know how to describe it. There are a lot of people who are better at describing it than me, so listen to all these podcasts and resources I'm going to talk about here after this, but it's something, and it makes you incredibly grateful for the things you have in life. Is taking an animal's life for your consumption and joy. It's very hard, and it's very stressful, and it can cause you to make mistakes. So you need to be prepared, and there's no true way of preparing it, but there is. Putting yourself in stressful situations while you practice is a good way to kind of let yourself figure out how to calm down and make clean kills, because that's your job as a hunter. If you're going to take something, is make it as quick and clean as possible. You don't want to wound a creature. You don't want to make it suffer. You want it to be over in an instant. You don't want it to know what happened. And I think it's a difficult task, and it's a huge responsibility, and you should be aware of it. And you should be aware that your responsibility as a hunter is to be an ethical hunter, and to make every strive to make things fair. I mean, it's never fair. We are a much higher species and have the capacity that every other species on this planet doesn't have. But you should try to make it quick, clean, ethical, and fun. Like, it's fun, as much as disturbing as that is for some people. Hunting is a blast, and it's not about the kill, but that's a huge part of it. That's all I'm going to say. And it's an emotional thing. Hunting is an emotional thing. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. You feel sadness and happiness at the same time, and sense of loss and gratefulness and remorse for a life, and it's a wonderful experience that I think if every person on Earth experienced that, the world would be a better place. You know. Now there's some people get their jollies off killing. This isn't for you. I don't. I don't like that. That's messed up. You know. We don't waste animals around here, and you know, we're all, you know, everyone hunts for a big animal, but that's not the reason we're hunting for a big animal. You know, just to kill it. Uh, so just make sure you're prepared for that emotion, and when the time comes, you're calm and ready to take action, so you don't mess up. And if you do mess up, it's going to happen eventually. Mistakes happen. You're human. I'm human. I made mistakes. I officially wounded an animal this year with my bow, because it is much harder to kill an animal with a bow. Shot a doe, whitetail doe. She ran off. I tracked her for until the wee hours of the night, almost till midnight. And just couldn't find her after a while. I think she survived. I saw her on my camera. The shot looked good. The wound looked good, but you make mistakes. I think I pushed her too early, and it's hard. And it took me out of hunting for about a month. I felt so terrible. So, mistakes happen, but this is so much more than a hobby. So I just got to get back on the horse. And I took a buck after that, a little guy, but he's filled the freezer room to eat the hell out of him. Anxiety I talked about. Oh, this thing people call it buck fever. You get a huge adrenaline rush when you see your first critters or see a huge animal. You make mistakes. It's a ginormous adrenaline rush. The first time I had buck fever, I shook, like above uncontrolled shivering shook. Like I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I was shivering, but it wasn't the shivers. And I was with my father-in-law, who was there, like teaching me. Not really, teaching me. Taught me a lot actually about hunting, and man, shook me. Like I was shaking violently, and he was giggling at me because he knows the feeling. But I thought I was just shivering, and he was telling everyone, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't believe him, and then later it happened again. I was like, okay, it's the fever. What are you growling at? Relax. So, be ready for the anxiety and the adrenaline. I kind of talked about this. As a hunter, you have an ethical obligation to be a good hunter and a responsible hunter. What does that mean? That means picking up your trash, damn it. Just pick up your trash. Why do we litter? Don't litter. Don't be an asshole. Making clean kills. Not trespassing on private land. I know there's a lot of frustration in not being able to hunt, but going up months in advance and getting permission and verifying your permission weeks in advance and just being an ethical guy or girl. That extends to waste nothing. One, there are laws against wasting meat on an animal you take in the wild, but you have an obligation as a hunter to, one, eat the animal you take, because we're not, bass-backward savages that just kill for killing. We're killing for fun, but we're also killing for food. So make sure you learn to process, learn to field dress. You don't need to process the whole animal as and break it down to cuts. You can always pay someone to do that. But I love it. I was a butcher in college, so I have a little more skill than your average Joe. But you're not going to waste, and that's important. You might lose some meat if you make a bad shot to the guts. That's fine. You just don't make a bad shot in the guts, and you'll be good. It's called a bad shot for a reason. With that being said, you are responsible for processing, or field dressing rather. What does that mean? That means gutting the animal. Now, I remember when I was first hunting, that was a daunting task. It was super intimidating. I was super scared the whole time, up until I got a job as a butcher, and I did it a million times, and now I feel super comfortable, no hesitation. But as not everyone's going to have that luxury that I had in college. So there's a million resources, million and a half resources on how to do this. My favorites are Steve Vernella's Meat Eater resource on this. He's put out a lot of great videos on how to do it, and he's very articulate and kind of explaining things. He has this bandana that he just has for sale at the Meat Eater website. I think it's themeateater.com, and it's like step-by-step pictures and blaze orange on how to gut a deer, which I think, because you can watch as many videos in the world, but when you get to do it, you're going to forget something. So I think that'd be a solid investment. I don't know how expensive it is, but instead of having to get your phone bloody because you're going to be covered in blood when you're gutting a deer, that's just how it is. You shoot it in the chest where the heart is. If you hit the heart or the aorta or whatever, bunch of blood. So be ready for that. If you're queasy, maybe be with someone in case, you're going to be handling a knife. You don't want to pass out on it. That's a great resource, and you can just lay it out, and you have pictures there in case you forget. The biggest fear is puncturing the guts. So that's where the poop is. That's where the food is. You don't want to do that. If it gets on the meat, if you rinse it off quickly, you're usually good. But cooking kills anything for the most part. But the enzymes in the guts can break down meat and ruin it. So be careful. That's the hardest part. Other than that, it's super, super straightforward. Whatever's in there needs to come out. Boom, done. And that's kind of the intestines and stuff is what spoils the fastest. So once you shoot an animal, if you're shooting with a rifle and you see it go down, it's dead. Don't sit there and wait around. Go get it, especially if the temperatures are warm. Gut it, get it cool. Meat needs to be cool. You don't want it to spoil, right? If handled properly, meat can be outside and changing temperatures for a long time, but that's kind of advanced, so be prepared if you're going on your first hunt. Like, if I'm successful, how are we going to handle this? Now, some people think that'll jinx you. I don't care. Let it jinx you. You need to be ready for it. You need to be like, that's your priority, is getting this animal out and utilizing it now. Whether that's going to a butcher who does it, which is a Google, a way to figure out, make sure you call them in advance, be like, hey, XYZ, how much does it cost? If you want to do it yourself, read up. Be prepared to make mistakes. And quite honestly, if you're learning, I think it's, if you make mistakes, you make mistakes. And if you waste meat by your mistakes, that's fine. That's learning. It kind of stinks a little bit, but the more you learn, the better, and the better you'll get at it. So practice. But just be ready. Be ready for that kill, because you don't want to waste anything. It's kind of your obligation. Be ready to field dress. Be ready for blood. Guts, you're going to have to touch it. You can wear latex gloves, but you're still getting arms deep in there. If you have something you want to mount, if by chance you get something that's worth mounting, which I think if your first year is always worth mounting, in my opinion, or first big creature, just because it's such a momentous occasion. I have mine. I made it myself. Just a little skull cap, a little buck I got. Totally a great thing. So, if you're going to use a taxidermist, give them a call beforehand. Jinx yourself if you have to. It's fine. Figure out how they like things, what your options are, know your cost. Mounting things are great. People think it's trophy hunting. I mean, trophy hunting's a misnomer, one. But having that memento from your first kill will always serve as a good reminder of such a great memory. So I think it's always worth mounting. I love having mounts. Tastefully done. My wife won't have it any other way. So that's something to be prepared for as well. Cooking. You need to expect cooking is so different than what you're used to. If you've been cooking beef, chicken, pork, venison, or wild game is so much leaner. So much leaner than all these things. You cannot overcook it, or it ruins everything, and foul flavors and toughness come out quick. So get cookbooks, watch YouTube videos, do what you gotta do to figure out how to cook things. It took me a long time to properly figure out how to cook wild game, and I love to cook. I've always loved to cook, but it's a different ball game with wild game. Cooking beef, now that I'm good at cooking wild game, I don't know how people mess up beef and chicken, and I used to mess up beef and chicken all the time. So if you're one of those people, follow recipes. Follow recipes to a T so you don't mess it up. Easy, simple. Hank Shaw, Steve Rinella, my two favorite wild game cooks. Hank Shaw in particular, his recipes are a little awesome, but like some strange ingredients sometimes that I can't find. So be prepared for that. But everything I've had of his has blown my mind. So all right. That kind of covers my expectations. If you have any questions about any things I've talked about, please, please message me, okay? Please send an email, lessonsofthewild@gmail. Instagram, I think it's lessons_of_the_wild. Just type me in, Lessons of the Wild, you should find me. Do a lot of food stuff too, so if you want some recipes, feel free. I usually talk things up a bit, but the good ones are the best looking ones. Alright, kind of got through all the serious stuff. Let's talk about some things that have helped me learn through my time and resources I think you should trust. And I've always trusted, and they haven't steered me wrong now. I have gone through the BS, the depth of BS on YouTube and hickabillies who have done it this way since they were a kid and all that jazz. Not to mock accents, because I live in Kentucky and there are plenty of really intelligent people with accents, but I just, the hickabilly stereotype's fun to pick on. My number one go-to guy when I have any form of question is the Meat Eater crew. Steve Rinella in particular. His content is insanely good. He has a Netflix original show called The Meat Eater. It's his last 3 seasons, his current, but he is like 12 seasons. I think you could buy on his website, and Sportsman's Channel might still play them. I don't have cable, so I just used to buy them or steal them. Sorry, Steve. He's good for cooking, really good for cooking. He's got a lot of great recipes. He's got a new cookbook out, The Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook. Yeah, that's it. I just bought it. It's on my shelf in front of me. I was trying to read it. Really, really solid cooking stuff. Really incredible show. Incredible hunting show. So much better than, the tree stand shows, which I can't watch it. They bore the hell out of me. But there are apparently a lot of people like them, so I'm not trying to knock you, but not my thing. He has a great podcast as well, the Meat Eater podcast. Great guests, kind of over the head of the beginner hunter. But it's a good way to get in there, hear the culture, kind of figure out the culture of hunting, and he's a good ethical dude. So if you kind of want to figure out, kind of put to words your fears and emotions and kind of understand that, he's a good guy for that. Another really good guy for that is Ben O'Brien in the Hunting Collective podcast. He mostly does ethics stuff, has good guests on, talks a lot about ethics and the conundrums of being a hunter and the problems facing the hunting community. It gets a little serious for me at times, but it's still really good, and he's a really good dude. Drops the F-bomb once in a while, so if you got kids, be ready for that. Hank Shaw, let's go back to cooking. Hank Shaw, Chef Eduardo Garcia, 2 great dudes for cooking. Hank Shaw is just, I don't know if he's having any formal culinary training, but his book, Buck Moose, is my favorite cookbook because it just has insanely good recipes. Changed my perspective on cooking recipes, period. Oh man, it's so good. If you're hunting anything with hooves, man, oh man, good stuff. Buck Moose, great book. He has Duck Goose, does some foraging stuff. I think he has Pheasant Quail, Cottontail too is another book. I don't have those because I never hunted any of those last 6 species. Really want to, so if you know a guy, let me know. Insanely good. Chef Eduardo Garcia, he does, I think he owns, I know he owns Montana Max spices and stuff. His Instagram's awesome. Super inspirational dude too. If you watch his documentary Charged, you'll know why. Highly recommend that documentary. Great watch. Highly recommend. I already talked about John Dudley and Knock On. All things archery, period. This is the guy you want to listen to. He's on YouTube, podcast. He's He does everything. Instagram's great. He does a lot of good Instagram live stuff. Watch him. He's doing the School of Knock right now. Great for the beginner hunter. I need to do it. I'm kind of lagging behind. I don't have a place to shoot readily accessible like most people do. Not most people, but it's kind of a 30-minute round trip for me, and I just don't have the time right now. But super great guy, super knowledgeable. I trust everything he says. Every single thing he says, I take to heart now. I was skeptical at first, and the more you listen to him, the more you know he knows exactly what he's talking about. And when he explains something, he doesn't just say this is it. He explains in detail why this is it. And he's super valuable. Super valuable. If you're a big whitetail hunter or want to become a big whitetail hunter, Mark Kenyon, Wired to Hunt, such an invaluable resource. Such a nice sounding dude. I wish I knew the guy. He seems like a cool guy to hang out with. He's a strictly whitetail guy. That's what he loves. He's 100% the culture of Midwest whitetail hunters. He's just a great show. Highly recommend listening, and he's super educational. I've learned so much in just like the month or two I've been listening to him. Great. Love him. Keep doing what you're doing, Mark, if you listen to this. You want some inspiration? Cameron Hanes. This dude is a tank. Runs a marathon a day. If you want to feel bad about yourself but motivated at the same time, watch some Cameron Hanes. Crazy bow hunter. Does some awesome hunts. YouTube, Instagram. Good inspiration. Motivates you to get out there and train what you need to do and practice a bunch. I don't know if I talked about that, but you need to practice a boatload before going out there and know your equipment. Because again, you have an ethical obligation to be a good killer. Joe Rogan Experience. Love his podcast in general. Not always hunting podcast, but a great dude who has become a great hunter and kind of taken it up. He's been on Steve Rinella's show a lot. They do a lot of great podcasts. He has, I think, almost all these people on his podcast. I don't know if Garcia has been on or Kenyon, but listen to his podcast. It's cool. He's a stoner. He's a nice guy, but he's a stoner. So a lot of pot talk, which I don't mind, but I think it's funny and cool, but I don't smoke. He's a big bow hunter too now, but he kind of, if you go far enough, which is really far back because he's been podcasting for so long, you can kind of see his journey. And I've been listening to it for a long time and how he's grown as a hunter and almost been an anti-hunter to now full-fledged hunter. It's really good dude to listen to and a really great podcast. Highly recommend. And this podcast, Lessons in the Wild. I think I'm so far of the 2 episodes I've done, I think they're pretty solid. Only one worth of information. I apologize. I want to get more stuff out there. I really just, like I talked about in the first one, I just want to be a resource for you guys, something you can trust. And I help the hunting community. I want you guys to get out there and enjoy the outdoors as much as I do. And try to save some money doing it. And try to, make this learning curve of hunting a little less miserable to experience. Because it's miserable at times. So, if you have any questions at all, please message me on Instagram, Lessons of the Wild. Or send me an email, lessonsofthewild@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for putting up with me. Really appreciate y'all. Have a good rest of your day. Always thinking about hunting. What have you done for hunting today? That's my new slogan. So, have a good one.